Hi everyone, Nadia here, and welcome to Friday's Spiritual Advocacy. I appreciate your patience. Spiritual advocacy is a word, a terminology that I came up with when I was trying to explain what it meant when in the darkest of hours, when all hope had been lost, when shame had reared its ugly head both within myself and from outside sources, when I was in the depths of darkness, suicidal, lost in untreated trauma and addiction, there was something in me that was still searching for more. Something in me that knew that none of this finite life was really the source of my true self. Spiritual advocacy is going within to your soul to save yourself in those darkest of moments. It is healing oneself by connecting to your true self and the truth that lies within all of us. And that is that we are all infinite spirits, whole, perfect, and complete in our truest form. And that nothing that has happened in this finite life, nothing that anyone has said or done, including ourselves, changes that form. Spiritual advocacy also includes that when we do the individual healing, we can connect it to social change. We can face the system holding that truth within our eyes and within our hearts, and face a court, a judge, a social worker, a partner, whomever it might be, with that truth, knowing that we are doing our own healing work. We are changing and building skills within. When the courts and the system and outside sources of shaming see that, they will start to treat human beings as whole human beings and not the label placed upon us. Spiritual advocacy is advocating in your last dark hours for your soul to stand up and fight for itself, facing the system and outside sources of shaming with that truth strong in your heart. Today's spiritual advocacy title is How to Walk Through Slander, Animosity, and Manipulation. Those three words came about through a translation by my spiritual mentor, PAIREE Jane, in her translation of a mantra that is called RAKHAY, RAKHANAHAAR, Up, UBARITAN. The mantra is actually called RAKHAY, RAKHANAHAAR. And in it, the line I fell in love with was how when we turn to the infinite, to our higher power, that it rises, it carries us above any slander, animosity, and manipulation. And I was surprised to hear those words in a Kundalini Yoga mantra. However, isn't it true that that is the form of most grievances? Isn't it true that that is the form of most shaming? And so, last week's theme was, we have a choice between choosing grievances or reconciliation. This week's theme has been fortifying our fortress, strengthening our shelter, so that we can stand tall when grievances are shot our way. Personally, I'm dressed up and look like this now. But personally, my story includes treatment, jail, hospitalizations, and vehement public shaming in the press. Look at my name and you will see arrest photos, times when I'm sobbing and crying, and I don't look like this. And when I saw all of that out there, the shame that was sent my way was awful. the sources of slander in article titles like Nadia Davis found in hotel with drugs and boyfriend, when the reality was I had a stalker who came with a backpack of drugs I was unaware of, who ended up nearly killing me. And so what we can do with that slander is turning within to the truth that has never changed. Whether it's legal, factual truth like it was in my situation, or it's spiritual truth. It's spiritual truth, knowing the spirit is whole, perfect, and complete. And no branding or any label that was said changes that. If I know that, I walk in that truth and with that grace. If you know that, you can do the same. Nothing on a sentence that labels anybody as a criminal or an unfit parent, whatever it might be, changes the truth. Yet when we internalize it, we give life to it. The other word is animosity. I've always had a hard time connecting with resentment and animosity. It's just not a natural feeling for me. When it involves my kids and somebody that is hurting them or something that is putting them in danger, that's a whole nother story. The tiger mama comes out, and it's not resentment, but it is a fierce fighting spirit. Animosity comes in the form of degrading comments, of vicious texts, of physical standoffishness and power plays. Animosity has nowhere, no peace, no part of my life. It's unhealthy, it's unproductive, and it doesn't address the core underlying feelings that most of the time come from fear. So the way that we can walk through another person's animosity or grievance is, again, to find a quiet space, advocate spiritually for the truth that is underlying their actions, to not take it personally, and that when we go within, we can see that it is unacknowledged fear and judgment in another person that is causing them to say and do the things that they are doing. We can step back, set a boundary, distance ourselves, and just send love. When it is manipulation, that's hard. Manipulation can only be recognized when we are in tune with our beautiful intuitive nature. There are signs when there is ongoing, almost sociopathic manipulation going on. Yet, I have found myself in situations where I have surprised myself, where I've given others the benefit of the doubt, and then I've looked back and said, you know, maybe over a decade of marriage, wow, I made choices when there was an unrecognized manipulation being implemented here. Not even intentionally by other people, and when it happens over a long period of time. Yet for me, in my prior marriage, I had to actually go within to take and be accountable for how I had made choices along the way to disempower myself and to ignore my own soul. So long-term manipulation does involve us making conscious choices over time. And only when we are connected to a home within us and are fiercely sheltering that home, that spiritual space, that spiritual practice, can we be aware of when there's slight little things happening before us. When there is shorter term manipulation going on, it is a lot more recognizable. A lot more recognizable. And our intuition will kick in and it'll say, this doesn't feel right. And absolutely in those moments, we can say, this doesn't feel right. That is spiritually advocating for our own souls and for only love to be present in our life. That is what I needed to do most recently in a different situation. The beauty of all of this is that when we choose love of ourselves in advocating for our own souls, it helps us to choose love in our relations with everything else in life. Our individual trauma is not just our tiny little circle. There are layers that are targeted or influenced by our close, intimate circle and their response to it, our familial circle and their response to it, and then our community, and then the systematic circles. Stacey Haynes analyzes all of this beautifully in her book, The Politics of Trauma. And when we can see that not only is trauma layered, we can also see that how those layers respond to our trauma responses, that magnifies the issue. When we are connected to our truth within and are working on our trauma triggers, we can communicate when we are being triggered and educate our intimate circle, our familial circle at least, and say, I was triggered, I'm in a trauma response right now, and educate them to not shame. That's one way of changing the system. Our trauma responses are judged left and right. They are labeled mental health, addiction issues, and generally in society, those get a bad rap. Things are changing. Manipulation rears its ugly head when it comes to community, familial, intimate circle responses to trauma responses. Shaming is used, with finite tools to control the trauma survivor, to shame them, to drive them into the darkest caves by saying, bad girl, by saying, you relapsed, it's your fault. It is our fault when we pick up a drink in a trauma response. It is our fault prior when we are entering a deep depression to not reach out for help. However, the trauma itself is not our fault. It takes a partnered effort to change all the trauma that's happening in society. When we are shamed and manipulated into thinking it is all just our fault, again, spiritually advocate for your soul in those darkest moments. Connect to the truth of what you are, which is an infinite being, whole, perfect, and complete. Take a deep breath, sit up, approach the next hour, and you can get through the day. You can get through the week. you can rise above, connected to your truth, and eventually face the outside world. The more that the system and community sees us doing that, the less power their shaming has, the more likely they will stop the shaming. I will share this mantra and Priya's translation in my comments to this post. I'm going to read a little bit of it now, but it says so beautifully what we can do every day. Now, this refers to a higher power. It may use the word God. It may use the word infinite. If you don't feel comfortable with those words, and many don't, speak about nature, the ocean, the sunrise, the sunset, anything that we can bow our mind to, where we remind ourselves we are not these bodies nor the thoughts our mind makes. This mantra says, "You, who is my keeper and sustainer, have elevated me beyond my troubles. When I surrender myself at your feet, everything begins to resolve itself. Since you have become so lovingly benevolent, I don't need to figure anything from my limited mind. In stride with divine company, I can cross the whirlpool of this matrix. Listening to your guidance, I am elevated beyond the reach of any slander, animosity, and manipulation. By taking refuge in your vast infinity, my mind can surrender to your will. Whosoever can remember your presence, their pain, their suffering disappear forever." This is a mantra that I listen to every single day. Slander, animosity, manipulation. We are elevated beyond it when we turn to a home within and a power beyond us. They have no power. Let them do their ugly game outside our shelter. Wasted, expended energy while we build a renegade of light and love that will always win in the end. My twins' birthday was yesterday. They turned 7. Tomorrow is their birthday party. And I am full of gratitude. Full of gratitude for all 3 of my sons. And even more full of gratitude that they have a sober, stable, healthy mom that strives to be present with them every day and to teach them the truth of what they are. Again, we are all infinite beings, whole, perfect, and complete. We are not bodies nor the thoughts our mind makes. When we remind ourselves of that, your shelter is fortified. Sending love. Join me on Sunday for Healing Chat here on Instagram Live. Have a blessed, wonderful, fun weekend.